Oh yeah! Mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts. How do we like our martial arts? We like it mixed!
I'm fired up, everybody. The UFC is back in the Great White North, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. The site of tomorrow night's UFC 289 pay-per-view event with the greatest women's fighter of all time defending her title, one of her titles, against a dangerous challenger. Or will it be the final fight of the defending champion's career? Plus a massive battle for the lightweight division takes place in the co-main event. We'll discuss that and more right now as we welcome you to the UFC 289 preview show here at MMAfighting.com. Hope you're all having a great Friday. I am Mike Heck. We have quite the panel, including the wise wordsmith himself, Shaheen Al-Shatti, joining us from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. And going back up to the Great White North, the Prince of Positivity, and gosh darn it, my best friend, look at the plants, Alexander K. Lee. Hi, AK.
Hello, everyone, and yeah, say hello to my girlfriend's plants. Our plants.
Nice, ours. Well said, well said.
Stars of the show.
The stars of the show. Well, gentlemen, we are a day away from this card, and Shaheen, you said something pretty interesting before we hit record, so I'm going to start here, because usually we see cards like this, one in particular, a month out, 3 weeks out, and we think, on paper, not the best card ever. We get to fight week, still not really giving us the good vibes, but then we get like 2 days away, a day away, the storylines, whatever is there become a little more fresh and clear. The focus is on the event and only the event and the big fights at the event, and the anticipation levels rise a bit compared to where we started. So, Shaheen, is this card doing that for you?
Oh, you got to set me up like that, Mike Heck. I see how this is going to go. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat things, right? Like, we're all friends here. This is a circle of trust, I would say. No, it's not doing it for me. I mean, ultimately, I think there's no way to say it other than this is probably the worst pay-per-view card that we've gotten from the UFC in a long time, or at least in recent memory. And it's just, you can see it in the YouTube views, you can see it in the page traffic, you can see it in social media, just all of it. It seems like this is hitting the MMA world in the same place it's hitting me. It's not a lot there. There are two really great fights. I'm not at all crapping on the top two fights of the card there, especially one in particular I think is very, very good, and then the other is very good as well. But man, it's not my job to sell you on this card. That's the UFC's job, and I'm not going to act like it's my job, because this is just not a great pay-per-view card, and especially with prices raising every single year. I mean, what is it, like $80 at this point? I wouldn't be blamed if some people pass on this one.
AK, is it doing that for you? And I'm very intrigued, because usually your gymnastics scale is pretty consistent for a pay-per-view, but I feel this one, compared to most, it's like a step below in terms of top to bottom talent. It is a nice tight 11 fight, so I give it a little extra oomph for that level. But what's the gymnastics scale for UFC 289?
Yeah, listen, if the gymnastics scale, the degree of difficulty starts at 9 for a pay-per-view, this one definitely is a little bit under. Casey and I were talking about this a bit, and Jose on the weigh-in show earlier today, and just sort of comparing the last time they went to Canada, and I thought that card it wasn't great. It was I think we said it was Frankie Edgar and no, I'm getting confused now. Sorry, Max Holloway and Frankie Edgar. I think that's the last time they went to Canada, and it wasn't like a super amazing. I think Glover Teixeira was in the co-main. It wasn't like a super amazing card, but it was a kind of a notch above this one. So if that one reached like the bare minimum degree of difficulty for a 9, then we kind of have to ding this one. Some of it not this card's fault. We some of the names that were supposed to be on there fell out. That's fine, but we can only judge what's in front of us. So it's, if everything goes well, exciting fights, compelling main event, compelling co-main event, a few memorable finishes here and there. It's 8.8. 8.8. Degree of difficulty. I'm not saying on paper that is what, like, this is that level. Like, that's how good the card. I'm saying if everything miraculously goes well for the UFC and like it exceeds expectations. So I'm being very generous, I think, with the degree of difficulty here. But one thing you mentioned is like the price. It is absurd. Like, and why people are so justified in criticizing these things is this is the same. It's more expensive now to buy this card than it was, a year ago. And a year ago, this was, let's say, June 12th. The June pay-per-view was Yuri Prochazka, Glover Teixeira, Valentina Shevchenko, Taila Santos, and Zhang Weili, Joanna Jędrzejczyk as your top 3 fights, in addition to whatever else is on the card. And man, how can you say like this is the same? The card we're seeing on Saturday is the same as that. It's really a bit unjust.
And then you look at International Fight Week too.
Watching you struggle to get to the rating that you got to, AK, was spectacular. I just have to say, I appreciate you.
Degree of difficulty. That's what I'm saying. Again, it's not a quality of card rating. It is a degree of difficulty. So if this thing nails its triple flip, back flip Lutz or whatever, 8.8. I sincerely doubt it reaches that number.
Yeah, but listen, if you don't want to shell out $80, watch the watch party with myself and GC. We'll be dappered up and ready to go. We'll tell you everything that's going to happen, and Shaheen's going to join us for a little bit on that as well. So. But this card is going to close with 2-division champion Amanda Nunes putting her bantamweight title on the line against Irene Aldana, the champ looking to add another stamp to her incredible resume, while the challenger looks to continue with this Mexico MMA magic in the UFC championship picture. She can join Brandon Moreno, Alexa Grasso, and interim champion Yair Rodriguez as a Mexican UFC champion. Shaheen, we're supposed to get Nunes versus Juliana Pena 3. Pena gets injured, and we get the fight that most fans seem to have preferred to begin with. A little over 24 hours away, Shaheen. What do you think about the matchup, the energy levels of both women heading into this title fight? What have you seen from this week? How are we feeling about it?
I mean, it's a great fight, right? Like, first things first, tremendous fight. You can't hate on this fight whatsoever. The wave that we are now seeing with Mexican MMA, and in particular the rise of this really incredible group of Mexican champions is something to behold. And it does feel like there's momentum in the air for this, which makes this week, I think, a little more intriguing for me just coming to this. Like, if this event had happened, if this fight had happened maybe like a year or two ago, it doesn't feel like it would have hit the same sort of level in terms of intrigue and sort of, I guess the feeling around Aldana is what I'm trying to say, as it does right now. But man, what I want to ask you, Mike, what is your feeling around Amanda Nunes at this point? Like, why do you feel like the MMA community just doesn't care anymore? If I'm just being honest.
So I'll say what I said before we hit record, because Casey brought up, like, Amanda Nunes is not a prize fighter. She doesn't need to sell fights. She's just going to go in there and do her job and go home. She's just going to treat it like a job, and she's going to handle it and handle her business and go home. She's a pride fighter, but not a prize fighter. Like, she fights for pride and for herself, but it's not about getting rich and being a big star and being in movies and television shows. It's just about doing her job and doing it well. And all the extra stuff doesn't really need to do. I think she feels like she's probably peaked in terms of how the UFC is going to present her. So why put forth the extra effort if the promotion's not going to put forth the extra effort? And I just think on top of that, I don't think it's just necessarily not caring about Amanda Nunes. I just think people are just wondering where this division is going to go regardless of what happens tomorrow, because, and we'll talk about this later, what is there? If Amanda wins, Raquel Pennington, like, we've seen that already. Mayra Bueno Silva is like the newer, fresher name, and she's fighting Holly Holm. She can win that. Maybe they boost her up there. We have a UFC rankings for this division that have 3 fighters who don't fight at bantamweight. They're featherweights, or they fought at like catchweights of 140. They don't fight at 135, but yet they're getting ranking spots. And we're seeing the UFC sign some different talent to try to fill up some of these divisions, but there really is no division here at 35 or 45. So it's just tough. It's Amanda's just there. She's beaten almost all of these women already. And it's just kind of, at least we have a newer opponent here. It's a newer story, but I don't know. I think it's just it's just there. Amanda's just great. And if you want to watch her greatness, you can, but she's not going to trash talk Irene Aldana. Irene Aldana's not going to trash talk her. It's just 2 women fighting each other and getting people to care about it.
I think that's well said. And it's curious to me because it feels like Amanda just went through her version of Izzy Pereira, right? Like, this thing that she just had with Juliana Pena, in theory, would have everything that you would think would bump her up to the next level in terms of interest and star power, right? It is a trash talking rival who beat her once in stunning fashion. Then she comes back and beats her very decisively and sort of, again, does the Izzy, reclaims her title in a really decisive way. And yet, I don't know, man. It just feels exactly what you said. It just doesn't feel like there's a lot of interest around her anymore. It feels like people are almost bored by her, even though we just recently saw her lose. And also, I think just some of the, I feel like there have been questions around the motivations, or whether around her motivation, I should say, for a while now. And it almost feels like it's starting to come from her as well. I mean, we've heard a lot of retirement talk this week. We've heard, I will say her basically saying that she's stuck in this division just out of spite, more or less, because Juliana Pena can't be the champion. That was tremendous. And that's like, if there's ever a reason to do anything for spite, I am very much here for that, making big life decisions out of spite. But yeah, man, it's just weird. It's just weird how this might be the last ride we ever see of one of the MMA GOATs, one of the greatest fighters of all time, certainly the greatest female fighter of all time. And it's just kind of being met by a resounding thud from, I guess, the rest of the community. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is just that it's not cheap to be a fight fan, because you get 2 pay-per-views in July coming up and you have one in August. You could say all you want, like stop with the Jake Paul talk, but you're going to watch Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. Like, you're going to watch it. You're going to be interested in it because everyone else is going to be interested in it. So like, it's just a matter of budgeting out how you're going to spend your money. And if it's a choice between, I have $160 here for 2 pay-per-views of these next 3, I could watch 290 and 291 in July. I could skip this one. Like, it just seems like this is the one you're going to skip if you're going to skip any. But AK, where are you at with this? Like, I know we talked about this a little bit on BTL, but yeah, just there's not a ton of buzz for this card as a whole. Like, one fight in particular, which we're going to talk about, but this main event is not the fight that we're going to talk about in terms of the fight getting the most attention here.
Yeah, listen, I'm the prince of positivity as much as I can be about this card. Like I said, I always think it's a privilege to watch Amanda Nunes fight, but even I can only tout her, potential star power so much because, yeah, listen, Dana White and the UFC didn't do her any favors, but she's not the most active with putting herself out there. Let's be real. Like, again, do we think UFC should do a better job with promoting fighters? Of course, but guys like Amanda and Demetrius Johnson, like, if they're not going to play along, they have to do their part too. And certainly the UFC could have done more in their power to make people like Amanda and Demetrius Johnson bigger stars, but how much can you do? So that is the reality of Amanda. It's why I do think fans are just somewhat unenthused with this matchup. When it was originally the trilogy bout, there was a lot of eye rolling, which in MMA is pretty rare. Like, fans and combat sports in general are pretty open to trilogies, especially one where it's like clearly 1-1. There was no controversy about Juliana Pena's win over Amanda Nunes, but that second fight was so definitive, people didn't want to see that a second time. This is also the UFC's return to Canada. A third time. This is UFC's return to Canada after so long. I guess people were hoping for a little more, but the landscape is so different than it was in the last time they were here. And there's now 40 some cards a year, 14 pay-per-views a year. Some cards are going to take a hit. And this is the one that did it. I think we're almost fortunate that they were able to even save this card by bringing Irene Aldana in. So people can criticize Irene, getting this title fight all they want because she's not on some crazy win streak. She's the best available option. She's a compelling option. People have wanted to see her fight Amanda for some time. It's just, they wanted to see her, I guess, make that really elite, perfect run to the title shot. Doesn't always work out that way. In this case, I think they fell backwards into a more compelling fight than the Pena trilogy bout. But just phrasing it that way, how can you tell? Imagine selling it to people that way. It's like, oh, you're on the fence about UFC 289. Well, remember, Amanda Nunes is fighting, and she's fighting a replacement opponent, but it's better than what we almost had. Like, there's nothing sexy about selling that matchup. And then you can go down the rest of the card and listen, Oliveira, Dariush, a great fight, but is it enough to tell people like, yeah, $80? And if you love the main event, $80 for these particular 2 fights. I mean, there's some UFC cards. If we're talking guys like Connor's fighting, if John Jones is fighting, maybe Israel Adesanya, and you can have a top 2 featuring something like those guys, and you can have a weak undercard. Maybe you get away with it. Nunes and Aldana just don't have that kind of cachet, and I don't know if Oliveira and Dariush either, as much as I think all of us as MMA fans love that co-main event. So I don't blame people at all on the principle of positivity, but I just cannot blame people for not getting up for this particular pay-per-view.
Even that co-main event though, too, right? Because that was a late add to this. Can you imagine if we didn't have Charles and Beneil this week? Like what we'd be looking at and sort of the conversations that I guess would be happening is just, yeah. I don't know why the UFC hates Canada. I really don't. This is a consistent thing.
We've had some rough cards. I'll tell you that, especially pay-per-view. Some of the fight nights have actually been decent. The pay-per-views, boy, not a great history outside of when in the prime GSP days.
We would have got a random short notice fight that would be billed as a number one contender fight that wouldn't actually probably not be a number one contender fight like we got last month with Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. But that's a story in a rant for another day. But Shaheen, you mentioned Amanda Nunes and kind of where people are at right now. Look, she's got the history, the wins, the resume, the accolades, all of that is there for her. And I agree with you. Her saying that she thought about retiring heading into the first Juliana Pena fight and then reneging on that because she essentially couldn't stand living in a world where Juliana Pena was the champion of the division. It was just really great stuff. And just look at what she's done, Amanda Nunes. Knocked out Ronda Rousey, knocked out Chris Cyborg, knocked out Holly Holm. She's got 2 wins over Valentina Shevchenko. Are those fights we're going to go back and reign on Mount Rushmores of greatest fights of all time? Absolutely not. But she has 2 wins over Valentina Shevchenko, the 2 belts, and the list goes on and on. So, Shaheen, 1 to 10, how likely is it in your mind that you're about to watch Amanda Nunes' final fight tomorrow?
Oh, boy. 1 to 10, I would say an 8. 8.5. It would not shock me. I mean, we're on year 8 of this title run at this point, right? Like this is the fact that this woman has been a UFC champion for 8 years running at this point is one of the greatest feats we have ever seen in the UFC. I mean, just it's frankly incredible that this has consistently happened, or that she's consistently been able to come out here and perform more or less every time out, with the exception of that one blip against Juliana. But it certainly does feel like it's run its course a little bit. I mean, it feels like her again, motivate. It's so bizarre to talk about motivation, right? Because you're almost trying to peel into somebody's brain in a way that you just don't have that level of access. But just the way she talks about this and the way that she has sort of treated this week, and again, just these little admissions of, I've thought about retiring here. I thought about this. I thought about that. It feels like it wouldn't be a surprise if this is the last we've seen from Amanda. So I would go solid 8.5 on that, man.
AK,
are you as high on your score 1 to 10, Amanda Nunes' final fight?
Listen, Mike, I have been, I don't know how many times we've done preview shows, whether it be before Amanda's fighting or a 2022 prediction show, 2021 prediction show. and we've said something like, this is the year Amanda Nunes retires. And I've always been erred on the side of, yep, this is it. She's going to retire in the summer after one more title defense. Next year, I say the same thing, and then she'll retire after she's going to settle her score with Juliana Pena. What else is there to do? She's a mom now. She's got other things in life, and I keep saying she's going to retire. So this time, I will go against it. I will reverse course. I will reverse course. It is. Yes, it is. I'm not trying to reverse jinx it. I don't want to see Amanda Nunes retire, but I realize how many times can I beat my head against this wall before I finally realize, hey, maybe she's not in any hurry to go anywhere. She talks about retirement all the time. I get it. She's asked about it, so of course she answers and talks about it. But maybe the checks are coming in. She's enjoying that. She's having a decent time of it. She's had some tough fights. Again, that Pena lost, I'm sure that sucked. But otherwise, she's had some nice wins. She seems to still enjoy fighting, and as long as she does, she'll probably stick around, right? Because I always say this about athletes, like in any sport, is one thing that keeps them hanging on. Combat sports, not so much, because we've seen a lot of retirements and come back, a lot of opportunities to come back. But one thing that keeps high level athletes still going is you only have that window to perform at the highest level for so long. That's why guys like Kobe hung around for 20 years. Dirk Nowitzki hung around for 20 years. Sure, they weren't at their best near the end, but one, they're making a lot of money still. And two, once that door is closed, it's very, very, very hard to come back. So maybe that's in her mind. It's once she's done, and she's not quite ready to let go of that yet. So that's my only thinking, because it does feel like she has a lot of reasons to just step aside, that she's done it all. Her legacy is set. As far as compelling challenges go, there just aren't that many. But I'm going against my own dumb opinion that I've been spouting for 2 years and saying Amanda Nunes is here to stay. She is here to stay. She's gonna win or lose on Saturday. She's here to stay.
Wow. Interesting. I'm on like a 7.5, maybe an 8, but I don't know if I'm there. I don't know if it's like a straight retirement, but I could see a sabbatical at least, depending on what happens here. Like if she loses, it could be a straight up retirement because I feel like she has enough respect for Irene Aldana. I feel like she'll be okay leaving the division in her hands. And if she wins, I think she'll just be like, dude, I'm out for a while. And like, unless something really compelling comes along, like let's just say somehow, some way, Kayla Harrison goes out and wins her next fight and signs with the UFC, and she just goes out and starts bolting ladies, and she calls out Amanda Nunes after like 3 wins in the UFC. The paycheck's right, and the fans want to see it. I think Amanda kind of taking a sabbatical and fans wanting her to come back to maybe feed Kayla a little humble pie. I think fans would want to see that, but I don't know. She's kind of in a we can't miss you if you don't leave kind of a place. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I feel like if she does win, I don't feel like the Pennington fight's going to do it for a lot of people. I don't feel like there's a lot of fights in this division that could do it for people, but maybe she does.
You're telling me a featherweight title defense against Norma Dumont doesn't get you going? Come on.
Look, her versus Chelsea Chandler could be fun. You know, the 209, all that stuff. But yeah, I don't think Pennington's going to get her excited. I don't think really, like if Holly Holm beats Mayra Bueno Silva, you know where we're going, Shaheen. You know where we're going. God. We're going right back to that well. So
are we? Do we have to?
Yeah, that's probably where we're going. So that's what I think. I think
Josie
either way,
and
she's gonna
Josie and Nunes. Get me my Nunes on Nunes before the day is done. She is the one. Josie and I'm sorry.
What happened to this division? What happened to this division, man? This used to be the marquee division of all divisions, and I know we've had this conversation 40 different times on 40 different shows, but it's just it's unbelievable to see the progression of what this division has become, man.
The flyweight division happened. The flyweight division happened. All the ones that should have fought at 25 to begin with all went down. And yeah, it's just a very strange division where we're at now. But
Mike,
now it's time to go ahead.
I polled the people. I polled the people. Yes. Okay. Does Amanda Nunes retire? This got to be. I polled them. Does Amanda Nunes retire at UFC 289? 53% yes, 53% yes so far. I'll keep the poll up until it gets a few more votes. But yeah, so split. So 53%, not overwhelming. I think no one's really sure. I think people are kind of like me. I think there's other situations where it seemed like we were more sure she's going to retire. Saturday certainly would make sense, but there's just no guarantee with her. It's really hard to tell. I think you're right, Mike. I think there's also the possibility of a hiatus and her being like really unclear on whether it's a retirement or it's not a retirement. That seems extremely likely, and like we won't get a definitive answer until later this year. Like I think a fight night retirement is pretty unlikely.
Well, let's take a look at the betting odds. Amanda Nunes, the -320 favorite. The comeback on Irene Aldana, +265. This is according to our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the code the MMA Hour. Extra special offer. Maybe you want to place a wager or two on this card to juice it up a little bit for you. But those are the betting lines, Shaheen. Will it be and still or another upset coming here? And Irene Aldana joins the impressive crop of Mexican world champions.
First, I want to ask AK. I mean, AK, you're the king in the North. You are a resident Canadian on this team. What's the national buzz like? Is this a big national event in Canada this week?
No one knows. I mean, listen, Canada can be somewhat territorial, and I can tell you literally no one in the GTA. I should speak for the whole Greater Toronto area. That's absurd, but yeah. If
you're the king of Toronto. You can speak.
No. I'm a man of the city. I'm a man of the city for sure. I've got my finger on the pulse. But it's a big city, and Toronto in general is a pretty good UFC town. But this is not the kind of card. I mean, I'm just speaking for Toronto. Like, I don't think a lot of people are going to be flocking to bars, to their Boston pieces to check this out. I don't even know if a lot of people I know will go out of their way to like illegally stream like the main card. Simply put, there's just zero. Again, I don't want to speak for all of Canada. Just speaking for like again the GTA and some of Ontario. Like there's zero buzz. There's about as much buzz for UFC 289 as there was for PFL 4 last night. So,
jeez,
I'm just being real. I'm sorry. Other Canadians in the chat, correct me. I'm sure we got people across the board. Jose's on site. Maybe Jose will let me know, because I'm sure it's fine there, because the Vancouver fans are super, super passionate, and I expect it to actually be like a really good, like come off really well on TV. But I can say everywhere else it's definitely not felt.
So you're telling me you're not getting barraged with text messages this week asking people,
Not
or people asking you
one.
about what's going on?
Zero. Not. I thought. Listen, I just tell people, I wasn't like jumping at the chance to go to 289. I know it's the first card in Canada in a while, and I'm sure some people thought, oh well, AK is the Canadian guy. You know, it makes sense. Travel in country. I was not like lobbying hard to go, and when it came out like, oh, that I wasn't going, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the event or the fighter. It's just like, listen, I'm generally a house mouse, and if I'm going to go to an event, like, okay, I want there to be something like special, which is, again, maybe Amanda Nunes retires, and I think that'd be great to be in the house for it. But other than that, gosh, just didn't feel like this must go event. So, and I bring that up because I have not received one message asking if I'm going, if I'm there, if I'm in Vancouver. And most of the Canadian fans are pretty good usually. Like, I think when it was first announced, a few people asked me like, am I going? And I said I wasn't sure. And as the card has kind of like approached, no one has double checked. Like, it just doesn't matter to a lot of people. So for those who have asked, thank you for asking, but no, I'm not there. And a lot of people don't seem too concerned about who not just me, who is and who isn't at UFC 289.
Nothing wrong with being a house mouse. Nothing wrong with being
Love
a house
it.
mouse.
Sure.
So you asked me the pick, Mike. I mean, I will say, I think the shame in all of this, we've even done it this, like, just right now, like, and I've seen it throughout this week. A lot of people doing it. And again, we just spent 30 minutes talking about this fight, and we didn't really talk about Aldana whatsoever, which is a bit of a shame, right? Because she's sort of getting overshadowed by a lot of the, this is a bad card and people aren't really caring about this main event, that type of thing. Meanwhile, she's coming off of like one of the coolest knockouts that I've seen in a really long time, right? Like that her last fight was the Macy Chase fight, which, like, if you haven't seen that knockout, go watch that, because I don't know that I've ever seen another MMA knockout quite like it. Like, Aldana's riding a really, really interesting streak here. And again, the momentum, it's such a stupid thing to throw out. It's such a pundit thing, right? To throw out like, oh, there's so much momentum for Mexico, but it does feel like there's something magic happening right now with this moment in time. We've had other moments like this, right? There was an Ireland moment when Conor was doing his thing. There was an Africa moment when the Three Kings were sort of doing their thing. It feels like this is the Mexican moment. This feels like the rise of a Mexican generation where 10, 15 years down the line, we're going to be seeing a massive amount of Mexican talent come into the sport from this era right here, being inspired by this group right here. So I don't know, man. It just feels like there's something in the air special here. I don't know that I've picked against Amanda in any fight in the last like 8 years, but I think I might have to do it this time around. Just the conflicts, the combination of, again, all of this retirement talk, it seems very weird right now, where her motivations lie, how much she really cares about this anymore. And meanwhile, on the other side, like Aldana, this is everything for her. This is her entire life. Like, she has just been waiting for this moment forever. And it just the support with, Grasso obviously being her longtime teammate from the very beginning, and them doing it together, almost in a similar setup too, right? Like the Grasso stunning Shevchenko in a way that no one really was picking Grasso in that fight. I don't know, man. I think I lean Irene. I think this just continues the Mexican moment for me. And maybe that is what, like you said, Mike, Shepard's Amanda out the door finally is losing a fight like this against an opponent she respects. So I'm taking the upset here. I'm taking the challenger. But, a lot of people have picked against Amanda over the years and been wrong. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong.
AK, look, Irene Aldana is a very popular pick this week. A lot of people are picking her, and a lot of people feel like this could be kind of a trap for those lovable underdog fans, that this could be an overwhelming, y'all must have forgot Amanda Nunes, like 49-46 type of performance. So where are you at with this one? Who gets it done?
Let me say pretty strongly that if this fight stays on the feet, I think it's huge advantage Aldana. I don't think that's a super hot take at all. And this isn't, listen, I'm someone who's always kind of said like Amanda is just like kind of underrated in the feet. I know people just see her as a slugger, someone who just wings bombs, but she's gotten better. Like I don't think you can necessarily be champion as long as she has without having some technique, and she's certainly gotten better. I wouldn't say she's one of like the 10, 20 best strikers in the UFC, like pound for pound, but she's good. She can strike. But I think Aldana is just a lot sharper on the feet. It is sort of sort of her specialty, right? And if this does stay on the feet and goes the distance, we're talking 5 rounds. I actually think like I'm not even sure how Amanda Nunes wins a fight like that unless you really can overpower, just like straight up overpower Aldana. And I don't see that being the case. But one reason I'm leaning so strongly towards the champ to win the fight is because I'm not convinced that Aldana's grappling is where it needs to be. She's really aggressive on the ground, like on offense. Sure. She's had some great moments on the ground. Defensively, I just don't know if she can stop, if she can get out of some bad positions, if she can get up, if she needs to get the fight where she needs to be, if she can avoid getting submitted, because Amanda is just a beast down there. So because of that, because I just still have questions about the grappling, I have to go with the champ. I have to go, and still I'm going to go Amanda Nunes. I'm going to say by decision. I'm going to go by decision, but just because she's going to be able to control on the ground and have some moments in there, some ground and pound. I'm not saying it's going to be like the GDR fight, though there is certainly some stylistic comparisons you could make there. But I just think but I do think like that fight, the grappling is going to make the difference, and Nunes will retain and not retire.
My vibe since the first press conference before UFC 288 have been all on Irene Aldana winning this fight. I don't know why. Maybe it's like Shaheen said, like maybe it's timing. Maybe it's sort of the magic in Mexico. All of that is real. Maybe Aldana is being overlooked by a lot of people from a skill set perspective that could lead her to surprising some folks. And I don't know, maybe there's a part of me that has memories of going on a previous show just like this, speaking very confidently that Valentina Shevchenko was just going to not beat Alexa Grasso, but run her over in that fight. And I was so wrong. So maybe there's part of that plays into this as well. But then I did what I probably shouldn't have done and like watched a bunch of fights, and everything right now tells me Amanda Nunes should win this fight, like running away. Skill wise, she's better pretty much everywhere. Yeah, Aldana is probably the more technical striker, but I think Amanda can hang with her on the feet in a lot of ways. But I would just not feel right about myself. I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror, ladies and gentlemen, if I didn't stick with my gut. And that's what I'm going with. I can see Amanda Nunes getting off to a really good start. Wins the first 2 rounds comfortably. 3rd round, she is looking like she's going to win that round comfortably. She gets a takedown. She's beating Irene Aldana up. And then Aldana gets up. And the crowd goes crazy. And she lands a big shot. Round ends. Takes a bunch of momentum, even though she's down 30-27. And then Aldana starts to pick up the pace. She starts to get confident. She lands a big punch in the 4th. And we see Amanda start to backpedal a little bit. She lands another big shot. Amanda goes down. Irene Aldana gets on top, lands some big shots. Referee steps in, stops the fight, and knew Irene Aldana. But my confidence in those vibes dwindling by the second. By the time we get to the watch party, I might just say Amanda Nunes by decision. I don't know. But if that happens, you're welcome, world. You're welcome.
What a beautiful picture you just painted for us. Look at that. That was nice.
A little word painting. So let's head to the co-main events, the fight everybody has their eye on, Shaheen. And let's be clear, in a just meritocratic world, this fight shouldn't even be happening. Charles Oliveira should either be dressed in the 9s in just an incredibly colored suit, taking this fight in as a fan, or fighting anybody else not named Beneil Dariush, because Dariush should be already booked for a date with Islam Makhachev in Abu Dhabi in October, getting his opportunity to fight for a UFC title. But to Dariush's credit, putting it all on the line against the former champion. Shane, we talked a lot about this on BTL yesterday, but I want to get your take on this. Does Beneil Dariush have more to lose than anybody else on this card tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. 1000%. It's not even a question. He is Bilal Muhammad right now, right? Like we just saw this with UFC 288. He is Bilal Muhammad. He is all or nothing right now. This is the fact that because you said it right from the top, the fact that he is even having to take this fight speaks volumes to the way the UFC looks at him and sort of the opportunity that he is able to get within this promotion. He has one of the longest win streaks in the history of this lightweight division. 8-fight win streaks like his do not come around very often in this 155-pound division. To my knowledge, there have only been a few of them, a very small handful, and usually they result in some sort of like championship run, right? He hasn't even gotten to that point. If Beneil Dariush doesn't win this fight on Saturday, he is never fighting for a UFC title again. Like, this is not even again. He is just never fighting for a title ever, period, point blank. Like, this is just the facts of this situation for this guy. It's very unfortunate. It is one of those things. It's like a Vicente Luque. It's like a Tony Ferguson. We've seen so many examples of this very ultra exciting guy who comes in and the fights are kill or be killed type of fights. And they're always just spectacular to watch. But the UFC just never quite gets behind them in the way that they should. And then eventually they miss their moment, just like Tony missed his moment, just like Luque missed his moment. These things are so, the window for this is so small. And if you miss it, it's just never coming back. And then all of a sudden that 8-fight win streak turns into a 4-fight losing streak. And that's the end of your career. It can happen overnight. It can happen on a dime. And that is what Beneil Dariush is facing. Like, this is his career on the line on Saturday, if he is ever going to get to the point that I believe he wants to get to and he can get to. So, yeah, I mean, he absolutely has the most to lose on this card of anybody by far.
AK, this is a great fight. And I just do not have a great read on it, mostly because of Charles Oliveira, because he's just so unpredictable. And honestly, Dariush, in his own unique way, is very unpredictable as well. So we can go out and watch tape and watch past fights and break things down, try to pick up tendencies. But in the end, this thing could play out in so many different ways with these two guys in particular. So I guess, like, how do you see this fight actually going? Like, are we going to see a lot of on the feet? Are we going to see a lot of grappling? And what's the biggest question you have about it that you hope to get an answer to on Saturday?
It's going to be wild, man. And I hope, I rarely say this, I hope we do see a proper mixing of the martial arts, because as much as I say hashtag keep the martial arts apart, I'm usually saying that because a lot of fighters are bad at it. These two guys are two of the best, pound for pound, two of the best. Like, you want to talk about high level, exciting, offensive jiu-jitsu. Both guys have that. You want to talk about ability to slug it out on the feet, sometimes at their own detriment. Like, maybe they shouldn't do that. Doesn't matter. These guys will do it. They've both been in brawls. They've both been in super fun brawls. Like, this is just such an awesome matchup. And that's why, like, every time I've sort of thought about it this week, I'm trying not to think about the implications of whether a guy will win it, earns a hella shot off it or not, because be real here, when it comes to number one contender shots, nothing is guaranteed. There is just no such thing as official number one contenders fights in the UFC. It's not a thing. It's not in their contracts. They can sell it. We in the media can hype it up. We can help frame it for the UFC. We can say, well, this has to be a number one contenders fight. It really doesn't, because the UFC can always find something different and shinier to distract them. And guys like Charles Oliveira, and especially guys like Beneil Dariush, just get flat out screwed. So with that kind of pessimism out of the way, let's take this fight for what it is, which is, again, two of the most exciting 155ers in arguably, again, the most exciting division in all of MMA. I wish they could get 5 rounds, but 3 rounds can be great. Sometimes 3 rounds is better because you get that sprint, you get that sprint to it, like Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje, right? Like, you always ask, would they have gone the same pace? That was 25 minutes. I don't know, maybe not. So in that sense, maybe we're benefiting from this just being a 3-rounder. But yeah, it's really difficult to predict this one, because, like I said, both guys are so potent offensively with their striking, with their grappling. It's really hard to picture either guy just sort of like dominating the fight in either way and asserting themselves. So it feels like it's going to come down to someone making a mistake. It possibly could be a war of attrition, but based on what I know of Charles Oliveira, it's like he's either going to get Dariush or get got himself. I don't know if I see this one necessarily going the distance. But man, I'm just fascinated to find out. And I do have a prediction, but like as who's going to win. But as far as how they're going to get there, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. And I'm really, again, that's what makes it so intriguing, is that I'm excited to find out, and that it's not predictable.
Shaheen, make a prediction for what word you will use to describe this fight when it's over.
Oh my God. I believe I'll be on the watch party for this one. And I think at some point we're all going to be sitting here with our hands on our heads, just going open mouth. open eyes, looking like we just saw a ghost. I think something crazy is going to happen. I think we're going to say wow. That's going to be the one word is wow. I predict you in particular, Mike Heck, will say wow at least 3 or 4 times towards the end of this fight. And it's going to be a great clip. I can't wait for it. It's just spectacular, man. I mean, AK said it. This is opportunism at its best, this matchup, right? Both these guys are so opportunistic in there. And the moment you give them the slightest mistake, they can pounce on that in a second. And both of them, with the combination of their striking and their grappling, their offensive grappling is so fearsome that they really don't have to worry about takedowns, right? Like we saw that throughout. That was the hallmark of Charles Oliveira's title run, right? Is that he just did not care if you were going to go to the ground with him. And he would almost like bait people into it, right? Sort of like over exaggerating if you hit him, and he would kind of fall back and be like, hey, come on, play down here with me. But that also does feel like a very distinguishable difference of one thing that we talked about it when he was champion throughout the time of why Beneil would be such an interesting matchup for him. Because Beneil's one of those guys, he is such a powerhouse offensively, jiu-jitsu wise and defensively, everything. Like, he's not going to be Michael Chandler scared to jump down there with Charles Oliveira. He's not going to be, Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje telling him to stand up. Like, he is going, if he hurts Charles, he is going down there with him, and he's going to do that dance with him. So the way these two styles match up, and both these guys being so good in every realm of the game, but also so wild and so free swinging and just so willing to just sit there and have a war of attrition and just really blood and guts type of brawl. Like, this is such perfect matchmaking. If Beneil had to get a fight, right? If he wasn't just going to get the title shot, which he obviously should have gotten the title shot, but like, this match is delicious. Like, I can't wait to see this. This is 10 out of 10 across the board. And this is why the lightweight division is the best division in all of MMA. Like, the ability to put together fights like this at a whim. I cannot wait for this, man. There's no way this is disappointing. And I know that that could easily be a jinx, but it's not. It's like saying a Justin Gaethje, there's no way it's going to be disappointing. Like, this is going to be spectacular. And you could do it run it 10 times. You could have 10 different outcomes. And that's magic. I love that.
Shaheen, I want to go back to you on this because if Dariush wins, it should be a no-brainer. Him and Makhachev, Abu Dhabi for the title. Yeah. If Oliveira wins, not too sure he has that same fate, although he's very confident that's the case. But of course, yesterday at the press conference, Dana White played it makes sense right now. We'll see how it plays out card on both sides. Like, regardless of who wins this fight, like, we'll see what happens. I can't really say right now. So how confident are you that the winner gets a title shot next, regardless of who wins? Like, Bilal winning, I'm not confident he gets the next title shot, just mostly for the timing. Like, we know Islam's fighting in Abu Dhabi, so we have like a date set. We know it's like 3.5 months from now. We have something. The Colby and Leon fight, we don't know when the hell that's going to happen. That is not on the books. Maybe it happens in November. Maybe it happens in December. Who the hell knows? So a lot can happen. Here we have a date. But how confident are you that either way, regardless of who wins, the winner is fighting Islam Makhachev next in Abu Dhabi?
Just a masterful promotion by this masterful promoter, isn't it? Just really makes you more excited for this fight. Just the raises the stakes even more, that you have no idea what the stakes could be in this. I mean, I feel like there is 100% chance that if Beneil wins this, he has to fight for a title. Like, I know I lived and died this throughout the Tony Ferguson era, so I sound ridiculous in my own mind saying the words that just came out of my mouth, because there were so many different shows that I went on during then. Said, oh, if Tony wins this, he has to fight for the undisputed title next. He has to win. It's just, that man never ever did that. So, that's the world we live in. But I can't live in a world where this happens again. Like, this 100% chance for Beneil Dariush, if he wins this fight, he is the next guy in line. There is no other person. Like, if a Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier winner jumped over him, it would be an absolute crime against humanity for that to happen. And at that point, Beneil Dariush should just go drive to Las Vegas and burn down the entire UFC headquarters. Because like, what are we doing? Charles Oliveira, I think, has a much harder path. I think that's probably was the reticence for Dana White to just straight out make this a number one contender fight. Because I could very much see a world where if Charles wins, regardless of how he wins, that the UFC is eyeing that Poirier-Gaethje fight very, very closely and gives that guy, the winner of that, I should say, that opportunity. Or, Conor McGregor, who the hell knows? Conor McGregor is still someone that matters in this division for somehow in some capacity, even though there's no way he would be cleared by USADA to fight in that date. You can never count on anything. So if Charles wins, I think there's maybe a 50-50 shot But at Beneil, it's got to be 100%. It has to be, right? Like, what else are we doing?
Yeah. The only thing I think could halt that in some way, and it has nothing to do with Poirier and Gaethje, because I don't think either of those guys, regardless of how that fight plays out, is fighting Islam Makhachev in October. Those two are going to beat the hell out of each other. There's no way they're turning around in 2.5 months to fight Islam Makhachev for the belt. The only thing I think could stand in Beneil Dariush's way is if Volkanovski just runs Yair Rodriguez in like 2 minutes and then just cuts a scathing promo saying, I'll see you in Abu Dhabi, and drops the mic. There is a real world where the UFC would go to that well if Islam wanted it. And it wouldn't be fair. That would be the only thing. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be the only thing. Oliveira, I still think there's a world where you could get it, but he ain't going to be the first choice. It's going to be maybe Volkanovski again, if that same scenario plays out. And ladies and gentlemen, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor is not booked yet. There's a very real world where if Conor isn't back in the pool, Michael Chandler gets a call up to fight for a world title. It could happen, folks. It could absolutely happen. And then if that doesn't happen, then Charles gets the shot. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So in a right world, Beneil wins this fight, gets the title shot, and then we don't have to play the what could happen here. But yeah, AK.
I am just glad Shaheen was not broken by the Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw over Aldo booking. I thought that was the end of it for him. I thought that was like, you would never recover. You would never have faith in sensible matchmaking again. But here you are saying 100% Beneil Dariush wins. It just makes sense for him to get the next title shot in Abu Dhabi. All the stars were like, it's so logical. And as we know, UFC always does the most logical thing. So I listen, I should be the prince of positivity here, but I don't know. I guess I've been burned so many times, and maybe I don't want to see people get hurt. Shaheen, I don't want to see you get hurt. If Beneil Dariush knocks Charles Oliveira out inside of a round and says, this is it. No more, there are no more contenders, Dana. I'm the guy. I want Islam in Abu Dhabi. Islam tweets out right after, let's go, Beneil, you and me. We're going to book this week. We're going to book it. And then it ends up being again, Justin Gaethje versus Makhachev or something. And it just, for whatever reason. So I want to agree with you, and I'm glad you're so confident, but I'm just preparing the net to catch you and others who are so hopeful for Beneil, just in case.
Look, he has to get a microphone in his face after this fight too. And a lot could hinge on that. He could say, look, I said I wanted 10 fights. Now I just need 9 more and I'll get my
9 more, Dana. 9 more.
I'm coming. So the betting lines, Benny Dariush, the favorite, -145. The comeback on Oliveira, +125. Shaheen, I want to start with you. Before you make your pick, I want to throw out a little interesting statistic you may have seen or heard. Our good buddies, GC and Jed Meshew, talked about this on No Bets Barred. Charles Oliveira, this will be his 5th appearance fighting in Canada. He is 0-4 fighting in Canada. And not only is he 0-4, he has been finished in all of those fights. So is Oliveira due for a win in Canada, or is it Dariush coming through in the biggest moment of his career?
I mean, they said it, that you can't blame me. They brought that stat into the world, and now it's something that exists. So it's hard to go against that right now. I mean, I honestly, when this fight was booked, even when Charles was champ, I sort of always leaned Beneil in this matchup. It just feels like a really tough style matchup for Charles, one that is not maybe fits a lot of the wrestle boxer mold that we get for a lot of this lightweight division. Beneil's a very interesting case out here at Kings MMA, doing something a little different than a lot of these guys. I still lean Beneil. I think that Charles still has a lot left in him. This is not an indictment on Charles by any means. I think he's easily one of the best lightweights in the world still, regardless of losing his title reign. But I lean towards Beneil. This feels like very much, again, I said it at the top, a Bilal type of moment where he has to know going into it that this is his entire career right here. If he is ever going to do it, it has to be right now. I think he's going to get it done. I think it's going to be a very fun, very competitive decision, very back and forth. But ultimately, Beneil edges it out. 29-28 style, and we get the Beneil Dariush title shot that everyone has been waiting for. Obviously, everyone's been waiting for this. So I think that that's what happens.
AK, what are we doing here? What are we picking?
Listen, everyone knows I was riding the Dope Bronx train pretty hard in the lead up to him getting his title shot. When he won the title, I was like, he's going to hold on to it for a long time. I'm on record saying I thought he was going to beat Islam and lure Khabib out of retirement. Then he was going to beat Khabib. I had a lot of stuff going on when Charles was on his run there. And I'm not ready. I'm not ready to give up yet, guys. I'm not ready to jump off this train. It's been such an enjoyable ride. And I'm not saying if he loses at 289, that it's like we don't see, Charles Oliveira in big fights again. I mean, he probably has 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know however many more big fights he wants ahead of him. But I'm not ready to see him like take a step back in the title picture yet. I think he wins it. I think he gets it done. I just because I think this fight is not going to go the distance. I have to go with the guy who I think is just the slightly more dangerous finisher. I think he's just got a little more power on the feet. So I'm going Oliveira knockout round 2.
Again, this is so wacky and unpredictable. It's a great fight. I just feel like it's Dariush's time. I think just a good thing needs to happen to this man. And I think if Charles Oliveira, even if he loses, like, he's still Charles freaking Oliveira. You know what I mean? And I think this fight will look competitive for a little bit of time. They're going to exchange. Both guys can overcome adversity. Both guys can get cracked and get wobbled, but also crack back when they're in danger. I just feel like down the stretch, Dariush is just going to be able to do kind of what he wants to do in this fight. I think he can use offensive grappling. Like Shaheen said, I think if he knocks Oliveira down, he's not going to be like, come on, man. He's going to get up and try to get him out of there. And I think he's going to take a lot away from the Oliveira loss to Islam Makhachev. Like, their grappling is not exactly the same. It's a little bit different. I think Dariush is a little more chaotic, but I think that plays in his favor in a fight against an ultra chaotic guy in Oliveira. So I actually Benny Dariush getting him out of there, late second round via TKO, but this is just so hard to call because Oliveira is such a wild card and literally anything can happen in this fight. But I don't know, maybe just the vibes that Dariush just deserves this to happen to him, but it would just be kind of heartbreaking as a fan to see this guy on such a long run just get melted in his opportunity to fight for the belt. Because like Shaheen said, and I'm on this, if he loses this fight, barring like a 5-day notice, we need somebody to step in and save the day for a lightweight title fight, Beneil Dariush ain't getting a title shot. He's got to win tomorrow in order to get it. So the stakes are very high for Beneil Dariush, and I can't wait to watch that fight. Mike Malott, Adam Fugit should be a fun fight. It's a main card fight, kind of a wacky one, but it's going to be fun while it lasts. Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr is going to be just a blast. Can't wait for that one. Eric Anders, Marc-Andre Barriault, some middleweights kicking off the main card.
That is the definition of a Mike, you and I have had a lot of middleweight discussions in the last few months, and I feel like it's been watered down a little bit. This is a middleweight matchup. This is going to be 3 rounds of just B- level striking, B- level grappling, rounds that are just like, who won? I don't know. I wasn't looking at the screen for half of it. I like both guys. Listen, I like both guys.
That's just the way you want to open the pay-per-view. It really is.
It's a weird choice. I think it's a strange choice. There's a lot of other fights I think you could open with, but they like Marc-Andre as an opener. I think it's his second or third time opening a card in Canada, so I guess that's just his spot when he's up here. But this is middleweighty. Boy, this is going to be a blob. There's going to be two talented blobs just smacking against each other for 15 minutes.
AK is on. It's just on fire.
I'm sorry.
I love this.
That might be the first time I've ever heard of a fight referred to as a blob. That's
just
great.
Wait. I cannot wait to tweet during this fight because it is. If we get a first round finish out of this, I'll be the first one to say I was so wrong. But
AK, I think you and I have brought this middleweight thing to kind of the forefront here. Can we add an interim middleweight title to this fight?
Depending how it goes, this almost should just be for the title. Who has it right now?
Brendan Allen has it right now.
I thought it had to be Vettori. Is he not the final boss? Is he the Shang Tsung of this whole thing?
I think he's
Vettori's
too highly ranked.
His ranking is too high. And that's why for me, for Allen, because now I think he's ranked in the UFC rankings and I think in the global rankings. I feel like once you reach the top 15, you're out. You forfeit the title. No, you cannot be ranked. You cannot be ranked.
The thing is that that is who the middleweight division is that even like highly ranked guys fall upon this category?
It's true. It's true. Yes, there are several fighters and fights, high level fights, frankly, that we've seen at middleweight that are just, again, globular in nature. But I think Vittori's too high. He's fought Izzy twice. He's fought for the title. It's too much. It's too much.
I love it.
Globular
And then the feature prelim is probably the fourth best fight, maybe even the third best fight on the card. Nasruddin Imavov versus Chris Curtis. That's going to be a fun competitive fight. We get Jasmine Jasdavizius versus Miranda Maverick, Arichi Lang versus Ariel Hawani, Ayman Zahabi. Lots to like about this. I think this is going to be a good watch. Like, I don't know if a lot of people are going to shell at $80, but I think if you do, I think the fans, like AK said, I think they're going to be into this one. I think it's going to be like a pro wrestling show in front of a hot crowd. I think it's going to have that kind of vibe to it. And I think it is going to be a good watch on television. I think we're going to get some finishes. I think there's some competitive fights. I think flyweight under Nation is on life support right now. And I think the plug might be pulled after this David Dvorak, Steven Erceg fight, but we'll see what happens. Casey?
Amen. Plenty of Rage in the Cage events are fun watches, but I'm not spending $80 for them.
Well put.
That's very true.
Well put.
There he is, Mr. Spider-Verse himself, E. Casey Leydon. It's a good movie, right?
Oh, so good. So good. And I'm not one of those superhero fans. Is it a Marvel film or a DC? I don't even know. That's how bad I am.
It's Marvel.
It's Marvel. Okay, so it was wonderful. Highly recommend. Go to the movie theater and watch it. Don't watch it on your phone or your home. Go to the movie theater.
Do people watch movies on their phone? Is that a thing?
Sure. I never have, but I know people do it.
Yeah.
That seems like a waste of a movie.
Yeah. I watch bad movies on my phone. So yeah, you don't watch good movies. Yeah. Questions. All right, what we got here?
Let's see what we got here.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm sure.
If Benny is passed up again with a win, should he ask to be released?
To what? To go to PFL?
He could win $1 million there.
I mean,
Can he? Tell that to Brendan Lockney. I guess he did, but
Beneil probably could have won a couple mil at this point if he had just been in PFL for the past couple of years.
hey, it's harder than it looks. Listen, a lot of people thought they'd go over there and find nothing but wine and riches and were stifled. Should he, if Benny's passed up again with a win, should he ask to be released? No, and he won't. The UFC still pays him really well, and he'll be like, oh, it wasn't my night tonight, and I'm going to get right back on that train, and I'm going to earn that title shot. I know I can do it. I've made it this far. I know I can do it. So I think he'll be much more optimistic about his chances.
9 more wins.
Shaheen
9 more wins. Yeah.
9 more wins, and I'm back in it.
Does the UFC pay him really well?
I mean, I don't know. I've never heard him complain. So he must be making millions. He's never complained before.
Sound logic.
If you don't complain, you're making millions, I guess.
Clearly.
All right. Oh, this is interesting.
Do you agree with Ariel Hawani saying that there's no women's GOAT?
No, I don't.
I get it. I get what he's saying. I don't think there's a clear cut. I'm with Eric Jackman. I think Cyborg is the GOAT, but I completely get the arguments for Nunes.
No, I disagree. I think women MMA in particular has a very clear cut GOAT, because I've heard Eric make the Cyborg argument before, and it seems insane to me just because Amanda beat her in 30 seconds.
Yeah, but Amanda's also been knocked out by Julia Pena, and
then she thoroughly beat Julia.
And she lost to Kat Zingano, and she lost to Alexis Davis.
George St. Pierre lost to Matt Serra. People lose. I don't know.
That was only one loss. That's what I'm saying.
But if the whole thing is who has done the most and accomplished the most, it's Amanda, and she's also beaten all of the other contenders for the title of women's GOAT. It just feels I don't know the argument against her unless you just don't like her.
I think Nunes has had the greatest run. How about that? I think, and that's what we kind of differentiate between GOAT. Is it a whole career? Is it kind of your prime? So that's what I mean. Are we not counting Amanda's her run, her ups and downs before she became champion? Now, as a champion in the UFC, incredible, freaking incredible. One off night and she came back from it. So that's why I think there is an argument, but I'm not gonna go. How dare you say Amanda Nunes is the definitive GOAT? I'm not like
Yeah,
that or
but
anything.
as far as there being no goat, I definitely understand. So I think people who might not have seen the MMA hour, the reason one reason Errol explained it is because MMA as a mainstream business is still pretty young if we compare it to, obviously every other major sport. Now things definitely move quicker now. Like you can't just say, oh well, MMA has only been mainstream for whatever, like 30 years, and the NBA or whatever has been mainstream for 60, 70 years. You can't really compare it that way. Things do move quicker now, so I get it. We do have the advantage of being able to frame things, I think, historically now if we want to. But I've also I'll take this a step further. I also don't think there's a definitive men's GOAT, right? I think
No,
I've
obviously there isn't.
I've always been of the
So-
case that like MMA, like I'm with Errol in that MMA is still so young. Like if you had to ask me to name one, I would go Amanda Nunes women's GOAT, and I would go probably John Jones or GSP men's GOAT. Okay, depending which day you're asking me.
Yeah,
so
those are the two.
So I have an answer. But like I've always thought it's way too early to tell the sport. I shouldn't have said sport. The game, the business MMA is still developing. And even if you want to take it back, before UFC 1 and say, well, there was MMA happening here and there, we're still talking about like at the level that we recognize it at now, it's still maybe 35, 40 years tops. And again, and that's being generous, because I think if you're just talking about how we recognize a product now, it's really like 20 something years. Yeah. Women's MMA has only been in the UFC for how long? Like 15 or less than that.
Not
less
even
than that.
way
Less than that. So how can we?
So yeah, we're talking such a small span.
And then you can go Megumi Fujii. They were fighting in Japan for sure. Again, so let's take it 20 years. 20 years. You want to go back? That's still not a long time. That's not a long time to designate a GOAT. And I've always thought like, I hope so anyway. It should be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. We'll look back and go like, oh man, the guys who are great like 20 years, 30 years from now are way better than GSP, way better than John Jones, way better than Amanda Nunes. I'm hoping that happens. If it doesn't, then things may have gone wrong. We'll see. But I understand the case to not want to make a GOAT argument for women or the men right now.
Me too. Yeah.
I understand that.
Sorry.
I understand the case, but I think there's a difference between like I don't know, greatest of all time is all that GOAT means, right? Like that doesn't necessarily specify that something has to have been around for 50 years before you're able to decide it, right? Like if you and I invent a sport tomorrow, and then you're just very good at it and I'm not, you're the GOAT of that sport. Like that just feels like
it
pretty.
just has no
But
meaning,
all
though.
time also suggests to me.
Sure.
I think for people, when say all time, they also like are implying like future. It's why people are so hung up on like Michael Jordan. And I love Michael Jordan, and I for most part agree. Like, oh, there will never be anyone better than Michael Jordan. So when they're saying he's the GOAT, they're not just saying he's the GOAT of what history so far.
I don't
They're
see. I
saying,
don't take.
Oh, I think
GOAT
people
as a
do that.
future- I don't take that.
I
as a
don't.
future sense.
Because
Because there's always going to be someone better than whoever.
Listen,
like 100
tell that
years
tell that to a Kobe fan. You've seen enough Kobe fans out there, Shaheen. You tell them there's gonna be a better player than Kobe. No, man, Kobe's the GOAT. Kobe's the GOAT. GOAT means all time.
Lakers
Never gonna be
fans are
better.
ridiculous. I'm sorry.
I know, but
we all know that.
that's what I think. It's stupid, but that's why I think there's like these discussions when people throw these discussions out in MMA. I think there's some implication of like, well, John Jones is so good, and there will never be never be better than John Jones. So I think that's why
fundamental mistake when you're valuing the opinion of Lakers fans. That just
listen.
upfront,
I know.
I
picked one of the worst segments I could think of. I apologize on purpose for the sake of my arguments.
No, but it's fine. I like you mentioned time, like the length of time, because it kind of blew me away because I saw someone do a list of boxing GOATs, and they're dudes from the 20s, the last century. So like, I mean, like when we talk about, when boxing talks about this, they have a century to talk about it. We're talking, a generation. So that's all. Yeah,
I would say
I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you in 20 years.
If you were to award, like if the GOAT came as a trophy, right? I think being the GOAT of boxing should come with 100-pound trophy. Like that's a giant prize FC style giant trophy. Being the GOAT of MMA or women's MMA should be maybe like a 12-pound trophy. Like it's a little like participation trophy. Like there's not the history there, but that doesn't to me mean that it's still not like a thing, right? Because if something's around for 5 years, you can still have the person who is the best at it for that 5 years.
Like the power slap GOAT.
Yeah,
there is one.
Is that guy with the
Wolverine?
No, is it who's Slap for Cash? Is that a guy? I feel like I heard that name.
I hope so. That's a great name. That's a great name. There's a guy.
See what happens. See what happens when promotions care about promoting. We know who slap fighters are more than half of the UFC fighters.
Wah, wah. All right.
Slap for cash. It's a great name. I ain't taking that away.
I'm pretty sure he lost. I have no idea, but I'm
Did he
pretty sure.
lose?
The
I think they all
Instagram had
lost.
brought that on my feed at some point.
Why doesn't the UFC use grappling matches to build UFC fights? Benny versus Charles in a submission grappling match 2 months ago would have been awesome and really could have built up the MMA fight. Now they are doing they do the Fight Pass Invitational sometimes. I went to the one International Fight Week last year before I flew home. It was fun to watch. Like guys like Bo Nickel were there and others like that. What do you think, Shaheen? Like I think they're doing Glover Teixeira, Anthony Smith at this next one coming up. As the main event of the next Fight Pass Invitational. But why do you think the UFC doesn't just occasionally do a little more at the grappling side of things? Do like more Fight Pass grappling events and throw some of these names on there and build up at least some kind of competitive history, if you will?
I mean, I certainly like the idea, right? Like that's thinking promotionally. Like that's a thing a promotion would do to maybe drive up some more hype in something like this. It would have been fun. It definitely would have been fun, especially if you could write kind of like, again, I hate to say Pride FC, but Pride FC it out and maybe add some weird sort of circus stipulation of like the winner of this grappling event gets a 10-9 just to start with in the first round. You know, like you're automatically got a 10-9 in round one. You could even it 9-9 if the other person wins the round, but you sort of come in with an edge. Or they like pick the starting position for the fight where like maybe Charles won and he gets to pick from being in mount or something like that. Like that would be fun. I don't know. I like the idea of just adding a little splash of something different here, but we know that's not going to happen.
You are speaking my language with all of these ideas.
That's how you win back-to-back MMA drafts, baby.
Yeah.
You got the idea.
If they did that, it would be the ultimate fun championships, and they're not that. They don't do anything fun.
No, they're the unfun championships. Casey.
Okay, good one.
Pay Francis League is still the best one I've ever heard. Shaheen.
Sometimes you got them. Yeah.
What? But
Let me tell you something.
Doesn't one do this essentially? I mean, I know they don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, they have like a grappling league. I don't know if they do.
But they'll have grapplers fight on the same night in the same venue, the same cage. Has like kickboxers and MMA fighters. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it would be cool. You have to pay them, and then you don't get record profits if you just give money away to your fighters.
You're going to see something like this if Jillian Robertson ever gets her fight with Rose Namajunas. Again, it'd be inadvertent.
They'll get accidentally,
Yeah, but they'll show the video from that. Jillian Robertson submitted Rose Namajunas, and again, I don't know if that fight ever happens, but there you go. That's example. I hope something they would do, but intentionally and like planning it.
I will say, just in a world of fun things where things are allowed to be fun, can you imagine if like on that April 29th card where we're sitting there all night waiting for Ricky Simone, Song Yadong on the card that was like Olin Jacek versus Borrelio as the co-main, if instead the co-main was just Beneil and Charles were going to come out here and do a grappling match and there was like some sort of very, very small stakes for it, like, I don't know, that feels like that would have been, we would have been talking about that all week. Like that would have been really fun. I love this idea, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great, Jeff. You're in.
You're hired.
But actually, I think
what I don't know, but you're
this
hired.
other commenter actually has the answer to this question.
They know casual fans don't care about grappling.
See, I agree with that, but are casual fans watching Ricky Simone versus Song Yadong fight cards anyway? No, they're not. Like all of this is for hardcores, and like that would have made us talk about that week.
There was a media member at the press conference yesterday, a credentialed media member who asked, I think it was Nate Landwehr and Ige, is the first one who shoots for a takedown, like, do they lose or something? Remember it was some question like that? Like, And Nate Landwehr didn't buy that. He just said something. I'll take him down and whatever. But like, there's still you still hear that all the time. Like, I'm not going to shoot in. We're going to stand. Like, that's not the sport though. So I don't know. It's really weird when the credentialed media pushes that narrative too.
That guy also obviously hasn't seen ADCC Nate Landwehr, 2 of his past 3 wins by submission. Come on now. What are we doing here? Come on.
All right.
And I feel like if Nate is going to win this fight, it's going to be by like some kind of crazy submission.
Oh, I love that.
Do we talk this? Do we say this?
UTR fight?
Under the radar.
Oh, the low-key banger.
You're so hip and with it.
You're like working through my head of like,
You're
what am I
so
not
hip
thinking
and
of?
with
Did I
it,
miss
Casey.
something?
All right. Well done,
That was
Casey.
that was some good head movement that you just showed there. That's why
That was-
you're an undefeated fighter.
Wow, the
undefeated.
training.
AK, what's the low key banger?
Talked a little bit about this fight on Between the Links. I'm intrigued by Miranda Maverick versus Jasmine Yasidavicius. Again, both for seeing if Miranda Maverick can sort of get back on the prospect track. Like, again, Mike, you and I have said it ad nauseum. Like, there's no reason to count Miranda Maverick out. Very young. She's faced very good competition already early in her career. If she sticks with it, there's really like no, it really feels like she's gonna go on a run at some point, rattling off like 3, 4, 5 straight wins. And this could start on Saturday. She's again still pretty far from her physical and athletic prime, and I think a lot of fans are still, they still want to kind of see her have that real breakthrough. And again, and she could be on her way. We could still be like, again, 1 year away from really looking at her as a serious contender, but she has to have a good showing on Saturday. I think it's essential. And I also like the other side of it because Yasidavicius is a little bit on the older side for a prospect. I think she's 34, something like that. Yeah, 34. But again, she's young in MMA years. And I'm very curious what we have with her having sort of home court advantages at work, getting a fight in Canada. She's a pretty significant underdog, but if she can beat Miranda Maverick, completely changes her trajectory as far as where she could go in this division. But so I got eyes on both fighters, definitely on Miranda Maverick and on Yasidavicius as well.
Shaheen.
I mean, maybe it's cheating to say, but I would submit to you if you were telling me I'm cheating that everything outside of the top 2 fights on this card is under the radar, because I don't know that I've heard a single person in my entire life talk about anything but these top 2 fights for the most part outside of media members. So I would say, I mean, Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr, right? Like that. There is a very conceivable world where at the end of the year, that's the fight of the year and no one's going to be surprised about it, right? Like that's what we're sort of looking at. That's the ceiling of this fight. I am so all in on the Nate the Train to be frank. Like that is just, it is one of the most fun stories that we have had over the last year, is sort of the emergence of Nate Landwehr as this guy who's just going to come out here, just go balls to the wall for as long as possible, fighting these blood and guts wars, and then just cut the coolest pro wrestling promos possible in the best accent ever. Like, I just love everything about this. And so I think, Dan Ige, we just saw sort of a revival of Dan Ige, right? Like, a lot of us were writing him off to a certain extent. Then he comes out there and punches out Damon Jackson. I love this fight. I think this fight obvious fight of the night contender, but also like fight of the year conversation we will be having. We'll be talking about this fight at some point in that conversation. So for me, that's it.
We might even get a finish of the year out of this one some way. Could happen with the chaotic factor here. Yeah, this is like a weird card to pick a low-key banger. I think Shaheen's probably like right on when it comes to like outside of the top 2, maybe Ige Landwehr and Imavov Curtis. Everything's completely under the radar from there. Yasidavicius Miranda Maverick's probably the correct answer. Blake Bilder, I think, is going to have a nice little fun night ahead of him. I think he's going to get a big finish and kind of put the Canadian fans in a little bit of a sad state to begin things, but then Helwani steps in the next fight and can probably turn things around. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right.
We'll take one more if we got one. One more.
One more. Oh, and my answer, the Maverick fight for sure.
Yeah.
I'm putting this question up because I'm not sure if he was trolling or not, but
Why does Beneil get a pass on strength of competition, saying he deserves a title fight? Best wins are a past his prime Tony and Dober. Yeah, Mateusz Gamrot is a bum, isn't he? Jeez Louise. Are you kidding me?
The revisionism going on with Tony Ferguson now hurts me to such a deep degree, right? Like, because like I was the biggest Tony Ferguson guy in the world when that was going on. Tony Ferguson is one of the greatest lightweights of all time, and when Beneil Dariush fought him, he had only lost to Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira. He was very much not washed at that point. How you think of Tony Ferguson now is not how you thought of Tony Ferguson when Beneil Dariush was about to go fight him, and that is ridiculous to discredit that loss or that win, because that is still a tremendous win, regardless of what Tony has sort of become in this post-prime stage of his career now. Beneil has a good run, man. Because even look on that run, you got like, it starts with like Drew Dober and like Drakkar Klose, who's perennially underrated, and that fight was an absolute banger. Like, there are a lot of good names on this run.
Yeah, it is like Diego Ferreira. Diego Ferreira, he was the top 10 fighter at the time.
Win.
That's a great win.
I'm pretty confident when he beat Thiago
Diego Ferreira was on a 6-fight win streak when Beneil beat him. Like
Yeah,
they tried so many ways to get Beneil derailed.
Like he derailed the Diego Ferreira hype train. Like he kind of killed his title shot hopes. Thiago Moises, I'm pretty sure was. Yeah.
Terrible take. You should feel bad. You should feel bad about it.
Like
I'm happy you guys are shaming him. So that's why I kind of put it up there. Like, I appreciate it. You guys get me.
That we do in MMA where like if you say anything in a certain voice that's very dismissive, you can make anybody's resume sound bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, John Jones just beat a bunch of washed up light heavyweights. Like,
middleweights.
Like you can make anybody sound dumb.
Beat Rashad Evans. Rashad Evans got knocked out by Anthony Smith. You call that a win?
Yeah.
Dude, look at Islam Makhachev's resume before he got a title shot. Chris Wade, not in the UFC. Nick Lentz, Gleison Tebow, Cajun Johnson, a debuting Armin Sarukian, Davey Hamos, Drew Dober, Thiago Moises, who were both on the Beneil Dariush list, Dan Hooker, and Bobby Green. Those were the wins before getting a title shot. Not a top 5 guy, not even a top 10 guy. In that list of fighters that I just named off, not one.
No, you beat eight. Anybody who beats 8 has 8 wins in a row at lightweight, and like the majority of those are ranked wins. You deserve a title shot.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to Islam. It's like, and like W's are like all W's aren't created equal. You got to count the dominance in those W's too. And how does this person not put Martus Gamrot in this wins?
I love Gamrot. His last Gamrot thing.
Freaking Gamrot. I thought that was the fight. I thought, oh, Gamrot's gonna whoop up on Dariush. Yeah. And like I was like, oh my goodness, this Beneil guy is very good.
That was the one where it's like, oh wow, the UFC really hates Beneil.
They really hate him.
Anything they can to derail this, and looks great.
Mateusz gave Dariush a scrap too, and then Mateusz on short notice took on the gigantic Jalen Turner. Yeah. And beat him on short notice. That's ridiculous. But
the person who asked this question, Aaron Ray. Here's the attention you ordered. There you go. Enjoy. Here's the attention you ordered.
Incredible.
And one last one.
Okay.
It's a quick one.
All right. Which Canadian stock will rise the most this weekend?
This is the AK special.
Yeah, it's for AK. It's for AK.
I'm going to go with the obvious answer because I think he's going to put on a highlight. I think Mike Malott is going to finish Adam Fugit. I think by this point, I'm trying to gauge where the crowd will be based. Well, they'll be coming off the Ige Landwehr fight, so they'll probably be frothing at the mouth already for more, pain. And I think Mike Malott will deliver. Again, I'm trying to see how the card will go overall for Canadians. The results might be somewhat split going up to that point, and I think Mike Malott will put like the nail in. Like this is a night for Canada. This is a proud return to Canada. And listen, he's been a nice run of finishes already, so I think there'll be some talk about him. I mean, being close to a ranking. If he gets a ranking after beating Adam Fugit, I would be completely stunned. But at least in that conversation and establish himself as someone like who just has to be on main cards going forward, whether it's fight nights or pay-per-views. So I think big stock jump for Mike Malott, even though it's, it's decently high as it is compared to the other Canadians on this card.
All right.
It's a good pick. It's a good pick. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Oh.
No.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, you're wrong. It's okay. You can be wrong.
Mike's
a good pick, but to me, the clear, obvious pick and real winner of this is the perennially underrated, the beloved son of Canada, the king in the north, the man who has already put on a 10 out of 10 preview show performance here. It's Alexander Cayley. His stock's going to rise.
Oh, stop it.
Come on.
Stop it, Shaheen. You're embarrassing me.
You know what? You got
to be humble for you, but I'm not going to be humble for you.
Well, let's put this over the top, AK. Let's make Shaheen's suggestion a reality. We need you on the watch party tomorrow. Are you in?
Oh, you earned the invite.
Of course, I'd love to be on the watch party.
Good. Lock it in.
AK stock will rise the most.
Am I on for the Mike Malott fight, or we don't know yet?
It'll probably be. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
The middleweight fight? Can we?
Oh my god!
No. It might be the main event, AK. It might be the main event.
Oh my god!
You might get the main event.
Oh my gosh! Okay. Wow.
You come on this preview
So
show,
get
you
excited.
impress the
Wow.
heck out of the man, Mike Heck. You earn a watch party invite.
That's what it's all about.
Everything's
do
looking
this.
up for AK.
Yeah.
Everything's yes, big time.
Everything's coming up, AK.
Magical.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Gets the tag, comes in short notice, wins the strap. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we have done the best we possibly could to get you ready for UFC 289. And we'll try even harder tomorrow. I'll be off to New York in the morning, and then Casey and I will answer your questions from like 6:15 Eastern until the first punches are thrown, and then Jose on site. We'll have your post-fight scrums, all that good stuff. Watch party 9:45 p.m. Eastern with Shaheen and AK. Exciting stuff. We'll have post-fight show, and then AK and I will be back on Sunday with some on to the next one action. So, and Casey's dancing. He'll be producing all this stuff, so he'll be there as well. So, thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Get some sleep. UFC 289 going on tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Happy birthday, AK.
Thank you. I'm from Vancouver.